Today we're covering TV show Mandela effects. Brand new ones that I've never talked about before, as well as classic ones I've covered in the past. And if you didn't already know, a Mandela effect is when a large group of people remember something one way, only for it to appear different today. Almost as if something's changed. But that's the crazy part. It apparently hasn't changed. And when it comes to TV shows, TV has been around longer than any of us have been alive. So there are plenty of examples of TV show Mandela effects, so let's get into it. First up, let's talk about Star Trek. Specifically the "Beam me up, Scotty" quote. This phrase comes from Star Trek, but like so many of these Mandela effects, evidence of it actually being said is slim to none. There are tons of variations of this quote, but never this exact quote.
Beam me up. Beam us up. Scotty, beam us up fast.
Scotty, beam me up.
Despite the fact that there is no evidence that this line was ever said, everyone has heard of it somehow, even people who aren't Star Trek fans. This is one of those weird Mandela effects where somehow everyone is wrong. Beam me up, Scotty, because I don't get it either. What do you remember? Here's another quote from Star Trek. This quote is a variation of the famous line by Dr. McCoy that says, "Damn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a..." You can fill in the blank. So yet again, I'm here to tell you that that specific line was never actually said in Star Trek. It just doesn't stop, does it? What's even stranger to me is that Paramount, the company that owns the Star Trek license, even quotes this line in their article, 50 terms you know because of Star Trek. Even the owners of Star Trek remembered this line. So what happened to it? Here's a new Mandela effect that gets really weird, really fast. So get ready. For nearly 20 years, there was a show that aired from 1968 to 1986 called The Dick Cavett Show. It was a talk show hosted by comedian, author, and writer Dick Cavett. The Mandela effect regarding this show dates back to an episode that was filmed June 7th, 1971, that was never aired and no one ever saw. Why? Because the guest on that episode actually died during its filming in front of a live studio audience. The guest on that episode was publisher J.I. Rodell, who was an early advocate of sustainable agriculture and organic farming in the United States. Mr. Rodell was a big health guy, and he made his name talking about health. In fact, he was known as the originator of the word organic when describing produce. In kind of a dark, ironic way, he actually made a lot of quotes in this episode that kind of tempted fate. He said, "I'm in such good health that I fell down a long flight of stairs yesterday and I laughed all the way." As well as, "I've decided to live to be 100. And even, "I never felt better in my life." Yeah, as if the foreshadowing wasn't enough, he continued, "I'm going to live to be 100 unless I'm run down by some sugar-crazed taxi driver." Well, apparently he passed away shortly after that from a heart attack. Now, the details are fuzzy because, again, this wasn't aired. But from the few that were there in the audience, here's what happened. The host, Dick Cavett, was speaking with journalist Pete Hamill when Rodell slumped forward and began making a snoring noise. Now, what happens next is contested. Dick claims that both he and Pete immediately noticed that something was wrong, with Pete saying, "This looks bad." Other accounts from the audience said that Dick made a joke saying, "Are we boring you, Mr. Rodell?" Now, Dick has emphatically denied that and says that he doesn't remember saying it, although two physicians who were in the audience at the time did remember him saying that. And the same physicians rushed to the stage trying to revive Rodell, but it was too late. He was eventually transferred to Roosevelt Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. That night's episode was never aired, and a rerun was shown in its place. So what's the Mandela effect here? Here's where it gets weirder. The host, Dick Cavett, claims that he is approached about this often by people wanting to discuss the incident. And not that they're curious about what happened, but rather they are convinced that they saw it on television. He's encountered this so much that he even has a system of dealing with it. He would ask if the person was in the studio audience that night, as it would have been the only way for them to have witnessed what happened, and every single time he gets a no as a reply, saying that they saw it on TV. Check this out.
Somebody would say, "I'll never forget the look on your face when that guy died on your show." And they'll just, and now I have the choice at that moment of saying, "You were there." No. This is interesting because I'm not calling you a liar or any means, but it never aired. What are you talking about? Will be one reaction. Or, didn't it? God, I could swear you reached out and they weren't there. These people could pass a polygraph test that they saw it, and they're kind of hurt, and they're kind of disappointed that they have had this memory taken away from them.
Now that you have some backstory, what do you think about all this? How is it possible that so many people seem to remember in such great detail an event that they literally never saw? Or did they see it, and somehow something changed? Mysteries like this are why I absolutely love the Mandela effect. Some things are just too strange to believe. Now, this event took place over 55 years ago, so it's unlikely that those out there who saw this live, or think they saw it live, and were at an age where they could comprehend and understand what they were seeing, are still with us. Put simply, time isn't on our side. So if you happen to remember this, or even have vague memories of this event, anything at all, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Here's a fascinating Mandela effect from Brazil about the anime Dragon Ball Z and that dreadful day of September 11th, 2001. I know some people in my audience aren't old enough to remember this because they weren't alive. But if you were alive and you do you remember where you were for September 11th, 2001? I remember exactly where I was, what I was doing. I remember who was there with me when that day happened. Our teacher got a phone call on the telephone in the classroom and then turned on the TV, and all of us watched 9/11 happen on the news. The first tower of the Twin Towers had already been hit, and we didn't know the second one was going to be hit. But there we were, 7th graders in math class, staring in absolute horror. And to this day, I don't know why anyone thought it was a good idea to show this to children, but they did, and I've always been fascinated by that day. In Brazil, there are many, and I mean many reports and accounts of people watching Dragon Ball Z live when 9/11 happened. Apparently, it cut away from whatever episode of Dragon Ball Z was playing at the time to show what was going down in New York City. And like me with my 7th grade memories, this is the account of thousands of young Brazilians. I mean, I guess they're not young anymore, but at the time they were young. But here's the thing, and this is the Mandela effect. Dragon Ball Z was not playing at that time, anywhere in Brazil. People have scoured the internet to reconcile their memories, to make this make sense. They've watched through video recordings of that day, they dug through broadcast records of that time, and it didn't happen. Somehow Dragon Ball Z wasn't playing when 9/11 happened in Brazil, even though thousands of people remember it that way. How crazy is that? So if you're in my audience and you're Brazilian, or perhaps you lived in Brazil at that time, what do you remember? Maybe I'm late to the party on this one, but I just heard of it and it's blowing my mind. How many of you remember Lassie? The fictional female rough collie dog who starred in movies, radio dramas, as well as an unbelievable amount of television shows, specials, and even a PlayStation 2 game. Seriously, I'm not even joking, that was a real thing. Well, apparently there's a Mandela effect regarding her that's got a lot of people scratching their heads. Do you remember people saying the phrase, "What is it, Lassie? What? Timmy's fallen in the well?" Well, apparently that phrase has never been mentioned before, and this scenario has never played out before in any of the Lassie media, including all 571 episodes of the Lassie TV show. In fact, the only people in all of Lassie that I could find that fell into a well was a water company guy that pushed Timmy, and in return Lassie tackled him into a well in an episode called The Well, and Timmy's great uncle who fell into a well in season 4's The Crow. But the story doesn't end there, it gets deeper. This phrase or concept of Timmy falling into the well is so well known and so prevalent that John Provost, the man who played Timmy Martin, actually named his autobiography Timmy's in the Well, the John Provost story. And to make things even weirder, as it is now, it wasn't Timmy that fell down the well, it was actually Lassie. Apparently in a 2-part episode in season 17, Lassie was the one to fall down the well and Timmy had to go get help. Does any of this sound right to you? Let me hear about it in the comments below. I want to know exactly what you remember. Here is a clever and funny Mandela effect Easter egg hidden away in the television show Mr. Robot. In Season 3, Episode 4, there is a scene where Darlene is on her laptop and downloading a movie in the background. If you look closely, you'll see that the movie she's downloading is the 1996 movie Shazam, starring Sinbad that doesn't exist and apparently never has. Sure, a lot of us remember it, but no one has found a single trace of it ever existing. One of those really weird ones that I'm not sure will ever be resolved. Regardless of resolution, stuff like this is a fun wink and a nod to fans of the Mandela effect, and I figured you'd enjoy hearing about it. I'm hoping that as we go forward, even more media makes references to stuff like this. Let's talk about a classic cartoon pair from the 90s, Pinky and the Brain. One mouse being highly intelligent with plans for world domination, and the other one being not so much. This back and forth dynamic is what made these characters so fun. These two characters were first introduced in the cartoon show Animaniacs, then getting their own show called Pinky and the Brain, and ending their 90s run with a series called Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain. These characters were around for a long time and a lot of episodes, so this quote should be really simple to finish for anyone that watched them over the years. In each episode, Brain says, "Pinky, are you blanking what I'm blanking?" What goes in the blank? Thinking or pondering? Pinky, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Or is it, Pinky, are you pondering what I'm pondering? Turns out the answer is pondering. Pinky, are you pondering what I'm pondering?
Are you pondering what I'm pondering, Pinky?
Thinking has apparently never been said in any of the well over 100 episodes. Of course, if you look for the now incorrect version of this quote, which was apparently never said, you'll find example after example of people reciting it incorrectly. Which one do you remember? Let's talk about the Grinch. Every year around this time, I get comments from people telling me to cover this one. So it's finally time to cover it. Let's do it. What is the name of this Christmas book and movie retelling the story of the Grinch? Is it The Grinch Who Stole Christmas? Or is it How the Grinch Stole Christmas? This is one of those that didn't necessarily affect me, but there are so many cases of people online who are affected by this that it can't possibly be ignored. I mean, there are hundreds if not thousands of comments and posts out there from people who remember this differently than it is now. The correct answer is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I want to hear your thoughts on this because so many people remember this differently, and yet all of those people remember it in the exact same way. This is what I find so weird about all of this. Let's talk about the Flintstones. Or are they called the Flinstones? Which one sounds right to you? If you're old enough to have grown up with these Hanna-Barbera cartoon characters, this should be easy, right? If you picked the Flintstones, then you're remembering it correctly. The official title is indeed the Flintstones, spelled with an extra T. This is one of the earliest examples of the Mandela effect, where a large group of people remember something differently than how it is today. Apparently the reason it's spelled this way is a play on the Stone Age idea of flint, or Flintstone, which is a naturally occurring mineral quartz that was used by our ancestors as spears, axes, and most importantly to create fire. It's honestly a brilliant name for a TV show about the Stone Age, but why do so many people remember this incorrectly? Well, that's the Mandela effect for you. Sometimes things seem to change, without any discernible reason or rationale. Why do these changes happen? What's causing them? And why are they seemingly so random? Let's talk about Lambchop, the strange but lovable sock puppet sheep. Lambchop was voiced by the late and great Sherry Lewis. Now, this puppet had a preschool TV show that ran from 1992 to 1995 called Lambchop's Play Along. The reason I bring up Lambchop is because of an iconic song that anyone familiar with Lambchop would know. The song is called The Song That Blank Ends. That is today's Mandela effect. What is the name of that song? Is it The Song That Doesn't End? Or is it The Song That Never Ends? The correct answer is, shockingly enough, The Song That Doesn't End. Is that the title that you remember? Because that doesn't sound right to me. Strangely enough, if you look up this song on Google, most of the videos for this song are titled The Song That Never Ends. One of the few videos that I could find that actually had comments turned on was on Facebook, and that comment section was filled with confused people asking if anyone else remembers the song being Never Ends, not Doesn't End. Even the title of the Facebook video was The Song That Never Ends. I listened to the entire song, and it never says never. That's pretty weird if you ask me. So what do you remember? Is it the song that never ends, or have you always remembered it as the song that doesn't end? Up next is a Mandela effect that I've never covered on All Time. It's the whole Judge Judy has never used her gavel in any of the episodes of her courtroom drama. When I first heard of this one seemed so absurd to me, I couldn't believe it. At the time it became popular, I really enjoyed looking into it and reading about it and watching the hilarious reactions to it. But I couldn't give my stamp of approval until I had watched every episode of Judge Judy to confirm it or deny it. Thankfully, enough people took on the challenge, and eventually it was discovered that Judge Judy did indeed use her gavel on multiple occasions.
Bye!
Parties are excused.
Good. Dismiss.
Why you got here?
Hey!
That should have put one on you.
Listen to me. I can't hear everybody at the same time.
Had 24-hour oxygen.
Did you hear this?
My sister has never done anything
Did you
for
hear
my
this?
mother.
I gave
Watch
my whole
this.
entire life.
I don't want to use it.
As I look through all these videos of her using the gavel, the most hilarious one comes from season 1, where she slams her gavel down in an episode and says this.
No, that's not my signature.
It's not your signature.
I forged that.
Hey, listen,
mine.
I don't like to use this thing. It's a recent innovation of mine because I can't keep people quiet.
Here is a series of classic Mandela effects I've never talked about before, but recently I've been asked to look into it, so here we go. Let's talk about the A-Team. The A-Team was a popular TV show that ran from 1983 to 1987. This TV series is no stranger to the Mandela effect. Having not only multiple effects of its own, it's also been referenced in other unrelated Mandela effects in recent media, such as the Skechers commercial starring Mr. T talking about how Skechers doesn't have a T in its name. The first A-Team Mandela effect is in regards to one of the 4 main characters. Many people remember this character as Mad Dog Murdoch, but in actuality, it's Howling Mad Murdoch, and apparently, it always has been. Does that sound right to you? Both of those names have the word mad in them, but howling and dog, they're pretty different. Next up is the color of the 1983 GMC Vandura van the A-Team drove. If you know the show, you can probably visualize the colors in your mind. Many people remember it as an all-black van with a red line going across it. Does that sound about right to you? Well, it shouldn't. As of now, the bottom part is black, the red line is still there, but the top part of the van is gray. This Mandela effect has troubled so many. Next up is the famous line from Mr. T, "I pity the fool." A lot of people seem to remember B.A. saying this line in the A-Team, but that is actually not the case. Out of the 98 episodes of the A-Team, Mr. T never actually said that phrase. It was said in a lot of other things, such as interviews and in commercials, but it was never said in the A-Team. I don't know if that's memories getting crossed here and there, or if that's an actual legitimate Mandela effect, but as always, I throw these out there so that you can decide. Regardless, it's interesting to say the least. The TV show Power Rangers debuted in 1993 and became a cultural phenomenon. Toys, clothing, posters, and even pogs. If you were there, you'd know what I'm talking about. They used to literally sell us pieces of paper cut out into circles, and we'd throw them on the ground. The 90s were a simpler time. Anyway, Power Rangers was everywhere and remained relevant throughout the 90s and into the 2000s. So more than likely you've at least heard of Power Rangers. So originally there were 5 Rangers, red, blue, black, pink, and yellow, and eventually green joining them. I say all this because there was a detail I never noticed as a child, and I only recently found out about this, and it blew my mind. Did you know the Black Ranger, played by Walter Emmanuel Jones, was missing his middle finger? And not just in real life, but also his character in the show. Did any of you know this? Have any of you ever seen this detail before? I first read about it in a comment section, and I wasn't alone in my disbelief. Dozens of people were completely blown away by this fact, so I had to know more. And sure enough, we weren't alone. How did this possibly escape the eyes of everyone who watched this? I watched Power Rangers all the time as a child, and it's amazing to me that I never noticed this detail. I owned action figures of all of them, and the reason I remember this so clearly is because they had articulating fingers, as in bendable fingers to hold their weapons. This wasn't a very common feature of toys back then, so for whatever reason, this detail stuck with me. Perhaps this is just a shocking detail that I and many others simply never noticed or picked up on. Maybe it was always that way. I'm legitimately conflicted when I look at all the details. 1. He says he lost his finger in an accident at an early age. 2. There are a bunch of photos and clips of him on the show without his middle finger. 3. There are also a bunch of photos and clips of him on the show with his middle finger. 4. All of the merch, toys, and marketing showed him with all of his fingers. And finally 5. Unlike today, TVs were much smaller back then, and the resolution on CRT televisions was much lower than it is today. So I'm left wondering what to believe. Is this another case of the Mandela effect where history seems to have changed and now all of us are left to catch up on all the new details? Or has this always been the case? Let me hear your thoughts and your memories in the comments below. I'm talking about the classic radio and television production, The Lone Ranger. As the show starts, a narrator kicks things into actions with the words, "A fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust, and a hearty blank." What is that final phrase? Is it "Hi-yo, silver"? Or is it "Hi-ho, silver"? While residue for the opposite can be found all over the internet, it turns out that the phrase is now "Hi-yo, silver." Is that what you remember? Even lyric websites and YouTube videos still say "Hi-ho, silver", but the audio now says "Hi-yo, silver". And then get this, if you go to the Smithsonian website, they have an entire feature written up about the classic "Hi-yo, silver" from The Lone Ranger. Even my silent generation grandmother was thrown off by this. What about you? Does that sound right to you? Do you even know what I'm talking about? I'm sure you've heard the phrase Debbie Downer before, right? It's a common expression that's been around forever to describe a negative, pessimistic person. Someone who is constantly bringing down the mood of a group with negative comments or a pessimistic outlook, which often ruins the fun or enthusiasm of others. You'll be out with friends and one of them always has something negative to say. There's always a problem, there's always a situation. Come on, stop being such a Debbie Downer. Well, what if I told you that this phrase was actually relatively new? In fact, so new that it didn't exist before 2004. At least, that's what we're told to believe. It turns out this phrase hasn't been around forever, as a lot of you probably believed. But as it goes now, this phrase came from a Saturday Night Live sketch from 2004, but many online swear that it existed before that. Now, there are many people that remember using this phrase long before 2004. Some claim that it was back in the 90s, some claim even earlier. some even recalling it as a common slang term. Diving deeper, there is nothing online regarding its existence before 2004, which is deeply unsettling to many. I found many instances for Negative Nancy, Negative Nellie, but not one for Debbie Downer, outside of a person actually named Debbie Downer, wife of Edward Downer, who were guests at the Senate floor in California in 1945. So it seems like everyone is apparently misremembering knowing this phrase. It seemingly didn't exist before 2004, and there's unfortunately no evidence to argue otherwise other than our memories. Did this exist before SNL? And if it did, where did you hear it? It feels like there was a time before the internet, and now there's a time after, and this great divide between the two is still affecting us to this day. Interestingly enough, this isn't the first phrase I've covered with a similar story. Years ago, I talked about how the bucket list was a term that apparently didn't exist until the 2007 movie The Bucket List. A ton of people to this day claim to remember that phrase from back in the day, and yet again, there isn't any evidence to prove it. It's honestly so creepy how this keeps happening. This Mandela effect blew my mind. I had never heard of it until yesterday, and it's really been messing with me. It's one of those Mandela effects where you know you remembered it correctly, but apparently not. I'm talking about Happy Days, the 1974 TV series that ran for a decade and kickstarted a ton of famous people's careers. One such case is Henry Winkler, who played the Fonz. So what's the Mandela effect here? Get to the point. Well, it's all about the Fonz and his jacket. What color was the Fonz's famous jacket? Was it black? Or was it brown? As it somehow turns out, his jacket was brown. Apparently the whole cool guy with a motorcycle, slick back hair, and a black jacket trope was actually a cool guy with a motorcycle, slick back hair, and a brown jacket. During season 1 of Happy Days, Fonzie wore a windbreaker because the network execs didn't want him looking too thuggish, which is hilarious enough. But once the show was a hit, they let him put on the leather, the brown leather, and the rest is history. His jacket became so famous that it ended up in the Smithsonian Museum. Now remember, this show went on for 255 episodes, with plenty of references and spin-offs. Somebody somewhere should have noticed that his jacket was brown, right? What really infuriates me about the Mandela effect is that oftentimes they'll do these subtle little changes that'll be ignored by most people, where they just assume, oh, I guess I'm misremembering. But everyone else feels absolutely crazy. Like, it was black, right? No? It was brown?
Probably 8 to 10 of these jackets that were used over the course of the TV show.
Yes, and you're right. The other one is draped over Archie Bunker's chair in the Smithsonian. But now, I understand Fonzie almost didn't get to wear the same leather jacket. What is that story?
Right. The producers of the television show really wanted him to wear a windbreaker. They thought that the leather jacket was a little bit too tough, too edgy.
Yeah, because most Hells Angels wear their windbreakers.
Exactly,
right. On the bike.
But Gary Marshall really held out for the leather jacket. Maybe the compromise was this leather, and so that's how we got this wonderful television icon that you see before you.
Beautiful.
Now, critics of this Mandela effect will say, oh, you're just thinking about Grease or Rebel Without a Cause. So what do you remember? Was his jacket always brown, or was it black at some point? Here's a crazy new Mandela effect that's been gaining steam online. It comes from the long since ended but still popular show Parks and Rec. It's actually a funny scene from episode 5 of season 2, where Fred Armisen guest stars and says a line that is still quoted by many people to this day. What's the line? It's straight to jail, or straight to jail, as he likes to say. Over the years, I've even jokingly used this line from time to time, but as it turns out, as all good Mandela effects do, he never said that. That line was never said in Parks and Rec. Here's the scene.
This is outrageous. Where are the armed men who come in to take the protesters away? Where are they? This kind of behavior is never tolerated in Boracua. You shout like that, they put you in jail right away. No trial, no nothing. Journalists, we have a special jail for journalists. You're stealing, right to jail. You're playing music too loud, right to jail, right away.
So the way that so many people remember this scene is that right after each funny interaction, he would say, straight to jail. But now it's right to jail. What's troubling to me, if this scene hadn't become such a meme, I would have accepted it as maybe we're all just misremembering it. But so many people online swear that it was straight to jail. In my research for this one, I found an interesting post on Reddit from 6 years ago that showed someone saying in the title of the post, straight to jail, but the meme that they literally shared said right to jail. Fair enough, maybe it was a mistake, but then comment after comment underneath it on that post kept saying straight to jail. It's like reality changed for the meme, but not for the comments or the post's title. If it didn't make me sound crazy, I might say someone or something updated all this random stuff online. Not claiming that, but sometimes it sure seems like it, right? This is kind of a tangent, but my go-to movies that I can quote a stupid amount of lines from are The Last Samurai and Jurassic Park. Why? I have no idea. Some movies just stick with you. So the day those movies start getting some Mandela effects about them, I'm going to personally start throwing people straight to jail. Let's talk about the extremely popular Amazon series based on a comic book called The Boys. Put simply, imagine if superheroes were real and existed in our world. Think about how commercialized, corrupt, and terrifying that would be. People with superpowers doing whatever they wanted, it's a recipe for disaster, but it makes for a fantastically entertaining show. The Boys themselves are a series of regular people trying to take down these awful superheroes from the shadows. When you think about groups like the Avengers or the Justice League, in this universe, the Boys universe, it's called the Seven. There's a Batman knockoff, an Aquaman knockoff, a Wonder Woman knockoff, you get the point. I explain all this to set up today's Mandela effect, which has to do with the Seven's version of Superman, Homelander. Homelander is if Superman was draped in an American flag, but born in a lab and deeply violent, angry, and mentally ill. He had a handler named Madeline Stillwell. She was just a human, but was very powerful because she knew how to control these supes. What they liked, what they didn't like, what they were afraid of, and yes, what they were into. The relationship between her and Homelander was very questionable, to say the least. Where she would, how do I put this? Breastfeed Homelander. Yeah, a full-grown man. This was an ongoing thing across multiple seasons, where Homelander's obvious Oedipus complex and mommy issues were on full display. If you've watched the show, you know how crazy it gets. But what if I was to tell you that Homelander was never actually breastfed? Not once in the show. Not a single time in all of the seasons of The Boys. You'd probably say I'm lying or making this up, but as it goes now, this is actually the case. In the scenes where so many people seem to remember this happening, Madeline Stillwell is actually feeding him milk off of her fingers. Past a certain point in the story, in later seasons, he's drinking milk from a milk bottle or getting milk from a literal cow. But as for the breastfeeding, it never happened. Not once. Now this has led to crazy speculation and confusion online. Was it edited out? The answer is no. People have gone back and checked pirated streams of those first episodes right when they came out, and guess what? There's no changes to the content in those episodes. This reminds me of the Stranger Things Mandela effect, where scenes just disappeared. No one knows what happened to them. Link to that in the description if you want to check that out. So besides the memories of the many people online who remember, what evidence is there that these scenes actually existed? Let's take a look. First off, there are tons of comments from all over the internet of people remembering these scenes. To them, it happened. Apparently, we all misremembered these scenes. Next up is a website that I found, which calls it a breastfeeding scene 4 times in the article. I guess the writer of that article misremembered as well. Then you have another website that talks about the 5 creepiest scenes of Homelander drinking milk, and guess what came in at number 1? The scenes that don't exist now. The final one on their list mentions that you don't actually see any milk in this scene, because it's a breastfeeding scene. Huh. I find that pretty weird considering that's what so many people remember, but that isn't actually what happened in that episode. That never happened. What's even crazier is that this article used an image which shows the exact opposite of the text underneath it. Nothing is exposed, it's just Madeline Stillwell with milk on her fingers. It's amazing to me that so many people got this wrong apparently, including a top 10 list with descriptions and images of the episode showing the exact opposite. It's really weird. So what do you remember? Update. I can't believe this. I researched, wrote, recorded, and edited this entire Boys segment, ready to put it out there, and then this happened. Season 4, Episode 6 of The Boys released, and in it, Homelander finally does what he's never done before. He was breastfed. What unbelievable timing. I'm so glad I didn't put this video out before that came out. So here's the details. Homelander was just breastfed by a new character this season called Firecracker. You can't make this stuff up. I was literally about to release this video, and then this happens. So it turns out that the Mandela effect that Homelander was never breastfed was true, up until this episode was released. And to be fair, what the Mandela effect was that Madeline Stillwell was the one who breastfed Homelander at some point, and that still never happened. But now someone else jumped in and made it a reality for our insane Superman knockoff. The Mandela effect is truly amazing. I mean, what a crazy twist. What are the odds? What if I told you there was a scene in Stranger Things that a ton of people will remember in vivid detail that doesn't exist anymore, and apparently it never has? Today we're breaking down all the details in this video. Welcome to the latest Mandela Effect mystery, Episode 6. Let's get right into it. If you somehow don't know, Stranger Things is the massively popular, spooky 1980s themed Netflix show. It's had 4 seasons so far, with the final season on the way. Today's Mandela Effect mystery has to do with a now missing scene in Season 1, Episode 2 that many people believe at one point existed, but apparently never has. But before we get to that, we need to set up some important background details, and trust me, these details, they're going to blow your mind. This entire debate and mystery started because of an interview regarding Season 4. This Variety.com interview was with the Duffer Brothers, the masterminds behind Stranger Things. In the interview, they discussed a ton of fascinating behind-the-scenes details. But what was most interesting was the mention of changes they made retroactively to fix mistakes in already released episodes. It began with a mistake in Season 4. One of the main characters in the show, Will, had a previously established birth date from Season 2. In Season 4, the storyline progressed right past that date without any fanfare to celebrate Will's birthday. Obviously, this looks horrible for every family member and friend of Will in Stranger Things, so the Duffer Brothers made a decision. I'm going to read a few segments from this interview, so listen carefully, the payoff is worth it. One revelation from the conversation was that yes, they're likely to go George Lucas, aka go back and alter what's already on screen, about Will's birthday already having been established. So the Stranger Things team went in and altered the Season 2 episode to change the date of Will's birthday by inserting ADR, as in re-recording a different line to match the lips of the already filmed scene. So right now we have a grand total of 1 retroactive change to Stranger Things now on the record. But it apparently isn't the only time. The interview continues. We have George Lucas things also that people don't know about, he continued, while declining to detail specific alterations from previous seasons. You do have the physical copies though, the Blu-rays and stuff. You'd have to compare. As the interview wrapped up, the Duffer Brothers said that some of the visual effects had been altered as well, but nothing was done to the story. No changes to the story, just simply to clean up some of the visual effects. So now we have on the record 3 changes. The audio for Will's birthday in Season 2, something from a previous season, could be Season 1, 2, or 3, we don't know, and some visual effects updates in Season 4. That's all that's been established. The missing scene discussion started on TikTok and then spread to Twitter and other social media platforms, where thousands of people have claimed to have seen this scene. So what is the scene that so many people seem to remember that doesn't exist anymore? The scene in question allegedly comes from Season 1, Episode 2, titled The Weirdo on Maple Street. Nancy and her friend Barb go over to a boy named Steve's house. Nancy runs off with Steve to go get hot and heavy, while Barb is cast aside and left alone outside at Steve's parents' pool. Now, as all this is going on, another character, Jonathan, is creepily hiding just outside of the yard, taking photos with his camera. So far, all of this is still in the show. Here's the missing scene. Many people, myself included, remember Jonathan aiming his camera up at Nancy's window, just to see her, maybe take a photo. But then he sees her getting undressed for Steve, and after hesitating for a second, he takes another photo of her getting undressed. The way I always took this scene was that Jonathan was acting pretty sketchy, and it definitely came across as creepy. You see, Jonathan always had his camera with him, so when he went to go see her, at least it didn't seem like he set out to be a peeping Tom, it just kinda creepily turned out that way. After that, he turned his camera to Barb and took a few pictures of her next to the pool. Now this scene would later be important, because those would be the last photos taken of Barb, and would first introduce the villain of the first season, the Demogorgon. So here's the thing, there is no scene of him taking photos of Nancy anymore. He looks up and sees her, then proceeds to instead take photos of Barb. This creepy voyeur scene that so many people remember is now a lot less creepy than it used to be. It's simply Jonathan seeing Nancy and Steve in the window, and then looking away and instead taking photos of Barb. So what happened to this scene? Where did it go? And why do so many people remember this scene if it doesn't exist? Well, here is the official response. Here it is, the moment you've been waiting for, where the Duffer Brothers and the team behind Stranger Things comes out and says, this scene was cut. It was retroactively removed because it was too creepy for Jonathan, who would go on to date Nancy in the future and become a likable main character. They obviously didn't want a main character to come off that weird and creepy, so they cut it. Except that didn't happen. In fact, the exact opposite thing happened. Do unsavory character traits really need to be retconned? This missing scene caused a lot of noise online. So much, in fact, that GQ wrote and tweeted out an article about how going back and changing TV shows is a worrying problem. And get this, the Stranger Things team responded, forcing GQ to issue a correction to their article, saying, correction, A previous version of this article incorrectly stated that a season 1 episode of Stranger Things had been edited retroactively to remove a shot of Jonathan photographing Nancy while she was changing. And yes, we are aware of the irony. The Duffer Brothers say that some things have been edited in Stranger Things, but never story content. So people start looking for retroactive edits to Stranger Things, and they find something. In fact, thousands of people agree that a specific scene is missing in Stranger Things Season 1, Episode 2. This thing gets so big that articles are written about it. Then the Duffer Brothers come out and say that isn't true and a correction needs to be made. The scene that so many people seem to remember has apparently never existed. Now that we have a new Mandela Effect mystery set up, let's get to the bottom of this. Did the scene of Jonathan taking a photo of Nancy actually happen? A lot of viewers say yes, but the creators and writers say no, it never existed. In fact, the day before the GQ retraction, the writing staff behind Stranger Things actually tweeted out this: PSA, no scenes from previous seasons have ever been cut or re-edited, and they never will be. Not only that, after the GQ article came out and the correction was made, they quote tweeted the GQ article and replied with, "It's hilarious that an article bashing the show for retroactively editing a scene based off a false TikTok rumor has now had to retroactively edit their article. Oops." That's a bold statement in the face of so many that remember this scene. So either that's the truth, or they are lying and covering it up. Which is hard to believe because no one would judge them for editing their own show. It's their story. They can do with it as they please. We might not agree with the change, but they have every right to make it. But they stand by these words, so I'll take them at their word until something comes along to break that trust. So if this missing scene never happened, and the creators and writers of Stranger Things all said that it never existed, what's going on? This is unquestionably a Mandela effect because so many of us remember it. So is there any evidence or residue that this did exist at some point? I have, in fact, 3 fascinating pieces of evidence, so let's figure out what happened. Where did this missing scene go? Let's start with a 6-year-old Reddit post that was made the same year that Stranger Things Season 1 came out. In this post, the person claims to have noticed a detail on their second rewatch of Season 1. That detail being that it never actually shows Jonathan taking a picture of Nancy when she was changing. Why did he feel the need to make this post, defending Jonathan's actions in a scene that didn't actually happen? It doesn't make any sense. Obviously, the sentiment around this now missing scene back in 2016 was more negative towards Jonathan, that he was creepy. So this Reddit post was made to, quote, clear his name a little bit. If this scene was changed or deleted, it had to have happened after the show's initial release, but before this person's rewatch. In the 3rd episode of Stranger Things Season 1, there is a scene where it shows the photo that Jonathan took of Nancy undressing. So the photo does exist. This wasn't something that people made up in their minds, but seemingly the act of Jonathan taking it was not shown in the previous episode. So this begs the question, did thousands of people simply connect the dots mentally to a scene that didn't happen and somehow created that scene in their heads? Honestly, I'm not sure if the photo revealed in Episode 3 hurts this argument or helps it. I could see it going either way. Episode 3's photo reveal could prove that Jonathan did take her photo, but it could also be used as an excuse as to why everyone seems to remember him taking one, but actually didn't. Like so many other cases of the Mandela effect, these arguments and debates seem endless. To have something exist and then not exist, it's bound to create unsolvable mysteries. Finally, we have the Season 1 DVD and Blu-ray copies. Now these should be the smoking gun because once they're printed, they can't be changed. Well, it turns out that the physical copies of Season 1 don't have this scene either. It simply doesn't exist anymore, if it ever did. Stranger Things Season 1 released on Netflix on July 15th, 2016. The DVD and Blu-ray copies came out October 17th, 2017. Well over a year later. That's plenty of time to modify what would be printed on the discs. So to wrap up all of this, the Reddit poster saying Jonathan didn't take any photos of Nancy made that post on July 29th, 2016, exactly 14 days after Stranger Things Season 1 came out, meaning one of 3 things. 1. This scene did once exist, but doesn't now. This is an example of the Mandela effect. 2. The scene never existed, yet somehow thousands of people all remember it existing. Or finally, 3. The scene did exist, but was retroactively removed. The Duffer Brothers, the writers, Netflix, and all the creative staff behind Stranger Things are all lying to you and gaslighting your memories. I don't know about you, but number 3 sounds completely ridiculous. That would be so complicated, expensive, and hard to accomplish. And for what? There's no point. Nothing to gain. So it seems very hard to believe. I think I'm gonna go with number 1. What about you?